Hello, this is Rudy Giuliani, and I'm back with another episode of Rudy's Common Sense. And now Common Sense is zeroing in on the primaries. We've got one in New Jersey in just a few days, and then we have one in New York on June 28th. And those primaries may have a lot to do with the 22 election, but enough for that. We have Joe Pinion with us. And Joe, you couldn't pick a more ideal candidate if we weren't dealing with a brainwashed socialist state. This guy wins everywhere. He's exactly what we're looking for, somebody from out of politics. We need that right now because politics stinks. We got enough. Just look at, I'm not talking about just the rhinos in our party. Oh, we got to clean them out. Joe is from out of politics. On the other hand, very well educated. He's a man who has been very successful. And he's a man who has shown a great deal of interest in the community. And already, not even being a public official, has done more for the community than most of these phony politicians. And he's also a very intelligent and a very, very bright man. I'm telling you, if this guy were the Democratic candidate for senator, he'd be unbeatable. And the New York Times would be writing, New York will make history electing the first black senator. Well, you know something? Without the New York Times, we're going to make history electing the first black senator. Not because he's black. That's a great thing. But because he's damn good. So, Joe, I can't tell you how impressed I am with you.
Always good to see you, my friend. You're making me blush over here with the kind words. But look.
Well, no. They're true. They're true. They're 100% true. And, we all get into this when people say this about us. But then when you think of your opponent, we need you, Joe, more than you need us.
Look at what Chuck Schumer has done to this state. I don't have to tell you.
Well, tell the audience.
But look, he's been in the United States Senate for 24 years. He's been in Congress for 42 years. People forget, before he got to Congress, he was in the New York State Assembly for 6 years.
I remember.
So 48 years in government. I don't know what we have to show for ourselves. Certainly,
his chief of staff was Weiner.
Yeah, well,
Anthony Weiner.
It's a tricky road here. Again, it's been in many ways misery for most New Yorkers. We lead the nation in outward migration for a reason. The 19 million and shrinking that still call New York home. They are begging for Chuck Schumer to do for them what we have had the power to do for ourselves many, many times over. All we needed was leadership with the courage of their convictions and somebody who prioritized the common man, not the special interests. But Chuck Schumer, we know for a long time, he is Wall Street's hand-picked man. He's the number one recipient of campaign cash from the commercial banks, from the Wall Street fat cats. He at one point got close to 85% of all the donations from Wall Street to the United States Senate. I think that was back in 2009. So 85% went to one man. I shouldn't say 85% went to 99% of the Senate. 15% went to one man. His name was Charles Ellis Schumer. So I think at the end of the day, what we have to really focus on is the fact that our needs are not being met, that the man who represents us is really in the pocket of other people. And it's time for New York to go in a different direction.
Well, you see it when, let's say, some of the very, very vicious anti-Semitic statements are made. And I know Chuck Schumer forever, and his wife worked for me as mayor. Wonderful woman, by the way. She was a great transportation commissioner, and our joke was too bad she wasn't a senator. And of course, she has common sense. But the reality is that there are these vicious anti-Semitic attacks that come out of certain members of Congress that you would think a man who brought himself up as a defender of Israel, a defender of you can't let anti-Semitic attacks be ignored, otherwise it's going to grow into massive anti-Semitism. You would think he would stand up like a bull. Well, he hides like a mouse.
Well, it's tragic. I mean, you look at what's happened here. I mean, again, here in this nation, where in the birthplace in many ways of this anti-Semitic renaissance has been here in New York. And you have a man who represents the largest number of Jewish people not living in the Jewish state of Israel. And in some ways, he has stayed silent. When you have the boycott and divestment, the BDS movement, in many ways, it emanates here from New York. Chuck Schumer barely says a word. When you look at the fact that in the height of COVID, we had Jewish people being beaten in the streets, in the theater district. Looked like a reenactment of Gaza in me. It was not a play. It was real life. And he came home and gave the equivalent of an all hate matters speech. We had the disastrous decision to enter the Iran nuclear deal, which in many ways he stood against while whispering into the ears of his colleagues that they should vote their conscience. And now we're trying to refund Iran and this failed nuclear deal with the Russians negotiating on our behalf. And he is conspicuously silent and absent. So these are the stakes. When Benjamin Netanyahu, that former prime minister, hopefully soon to be prime minister again, came to the United States of America, addressed Congress, broke all manners of decorum to warn the world that there was no greater threat to the Western world and to the world as we know it than a militant Islam combined with nuclear capabilities. That should have been the warning shot that we should never entertain an Iran deal then or today. And the person who should be the most vocal is a man by the name of Charles Ellis Schumer. And yet, as you can see, open your newspaper, the man who has a statement on everything remains quite silent on all things when it comes to the Jewish state of Israel.
This is time to take a short break. Think your homeowner's insurance covers home title fraud? Think again. And neither does your common identity theft program. The FBI calls home title fraud one of the fastest growing crimes, which is why you need to go to HomeTitleLock.com, America's leader in home title protection. Here's the problem. The deed to your home is the only document that proves you own it. And the deeds to all of our homes now are online. In minutes, a criminal can find and forge your name off the deed to your home and refile as the new owner. Like Jeff, who spent a fortune in legal fees after a thief forged himself onto the deed to Jeff's home and took out loans. Jeff didn't have home title lock then. He does now. Or Deborah, who thought our common identity theft service would protect her. Then a criminal got onto the deed to a home and had her evicted. Deborah has home title lock now. HomeTitleLock.com is your peace of mind, and the deed to your home is protected. Visit HomeTitleLock.com. HomeTitleLock.com. Welcome back to the interview of Joe Pinion. He also remains quite silent on the crime epidemic in New York. And the crime epidemic in New York, unlike when I dealt with it in the 90s, is all over New York. I mean, it was basically in the 90s, it was an epidemic since the 70s under Democratic rule, all of a Democratic rule. In New York City, somewhere at the very end of John Lindsay's term, when he became a Democrat and became very, very left-wing, we went up to 1,000 murders. A succession of 1, 2, 3 Democratic mayors couldn't get it below 1,500 murders. Then it went up to 2,000 murders. That went on for 23 years of Democratic rule. Schumer, at that point, had some empathy for that and worked with me to get legislation to reduce crime. He's now embarrassed of that. That was the 1994 bill. He and Biden run away from that. The problem with the 1994 bill is they never watched the implementation of it. It did very good things. It reduced crime, but then it put a lot of kids in jail for marijuana, which it never should have. It was never intended to do that. And people tried to get him to change it. And he and Biden never changed it. Never changed it.
I mean, it's crazy when you look at what's happened here again. As I remind people all across this state, the old Chuck is gone. He's never coming back. And in his place, we see a man who was willing to say anything, do anything, to hold on to power in our name that never actually benefits the people he is supposed to represent. So he is now, again, reminding people he has 2 offices, one as the senior senator for the state of New York, one as the Senate Majority Leader for the nation. And in both of those offices, he does very little to improve the lives of New Yorkers. And so when you talk about the crime, let's be very frank. We are dealing with this malaise and these atrocities because of the three most dangerous words ever uttered in modern history: defund the police. Now, Chuck Schumer was supposed to be the old man with the gray hair, old enough, wise enough, experienced enough to know that those three words would lead to death and destruction. Instead, he put his head in the sand because he was more worried about a primary from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez than he was with the safety and security of the men, women, and children that call New York State home. And so now here we find ourselves where 2021 was the deadliest year to wear a badge in the history of this nation, where we had a 125% increase in ambush assaults on law enforcement. And now already in 2022, where we've seen a 46% uptick in assaults against law enforcement, shootings in particular, over 103 officers shot in the line of duty already and counting. Obviously, we lost two members of NYPD at the very beginning of this year that set the tone for the lawlessness that is reaping havoc all across this great land. So these are the stakes right now, that in the midst of COVID, we saw a 100% of the people that were shot or killed in New York City were Black and brown victims. The Black and brown victims are the ones who are the most victimized, the most vulnerable, and the man who wants to kneel in African kente cloth in the rotunda of Congress is doing very little to make sure that Black and brown communities are actually protected. No, he wants to go to Buffalo in the aftermath of one of the most egregious, hateful acts in the history of this state and rail against Tucker Carlson and Fox News. That's not leadership. It's cowardice. It's a con. And we're going to hopefully end it in this election with the help of the people who depend on Rudy Giuliani for common sense.
Well, I have to tell you, Joe, what happened in Buffalo is, in fact, one of the most egregious, most horrible things that's happened in our state. You could put it down with a list of maybe 7 or 8 other things that over the history of the state, we should be very embarrassed of.
Well, it's really crazy, right? To me, I always say it's not about, we have to start with understanding that there has been a permissiveness with violence and lawlessness that has been dropped in the drinking water of society. And now it is spreading everywhere through the arteries of society, and it is wreaking havoc on the people that depend on law and order and civil society. And so when you're looking in Buffalo, we have to have a wholesale reimagining of law enforcement, of law and order. I remind people that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, the word special victim unit didn't exist. Now it is not just a world-renowned television show. It is best practices for every law enforcement department across the country, because we recognize that there was a subset of particular crimes that demanded a particular set of skills in order to make sure that we were successful in making those crimes less prevalent in society. We now face a reality that there is a new set of crimes, right? Whether we're talking about what happens in these schools with these egregious and unacceptable school shootings, or whether we're talking about what happened in Buffalo, there are people who have all the indicators that they are a danger to society, but the manner in which we police these types of incidences does not allow us to effectively capture all of that information. So that is the conversation that needs to be had, but that would be a conversation about solutions. And the career politicians figured out a long time ago, they no longer have to solve our problems. They just have to figure out how to effectively lay those problems at the feet of their political opponents. Chuck Schumer is the preeminent expert in laying the blame somewhere else besides where it truly belongs, on his lack of leadership, on his inability to provide the stewardship that America deserves. That's why we got into this race, to let people know that the status quo will no longer be accepted.
This is time to take a short break. Not long ago, Mike Lindell, the inventor of MyPillow, and his team fit me for my very own MyPillow. They also introduced me to their wide assortment of other incredible products, like their mattress topper, their sheets, towels, slippers, and more. Sleep is incredibly important to me, and I can assume for all of you. It's time you give MyPillow a try and see for yourself. Listeners have helped build MyPillow into the incredible company it is today, and Mike Lindell wants to give back to all of you. You can get great discounts on MyPillow products by going to mypillow.com right now. and seeing each of the specially priced items, including those in the radio listener special square. You're going to see rotational offers up to 66% off on products like their pillows, mattress topper, Giza sheets, but also new products like their slippers, weighted blankets, robes, and waffle blankets. All MyPillow products come with a 60-day money-back guarantee. Enter promo code Rudy for these great specials. That's MyPillow.com and use the promo code Rudy. Welcome back to the interview of Joe Pinion. You know, Chuck Schumer, of course, always shows up when you can exploit things. He doesn't care about death when it just happens. For example, last year in the city of Rochester, they set a record for homicide. Never before in the history of Rochester have that many people been killed. Now, it comes after a Black Lives Matter reimagining of the police. They reduced the police to becoming social workers. Their idealistic theory was everybody would be singing peace songs. And instead, everybody killed each other more than ever before in the history of Rochester. Now, you would think a United States senator who cared about all people's lives, not just the ones where he could get on the front page, would go to Rochester and try to figure that problem out. I mean, Governor Cuomo was off putting people in nursing homes and writing his book. And Governor Hochul is trying to build a stadium in Buffalo. So they don't pay attention at all. But I think if you were a United States senator and you saw that one of your cities, white or black, had a record set of murders in its 200-year history, you'd want to sit down with the people and find out, why did this happen? How can we stop it?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll take it a step.
I know
further.
that. I know you would do that.
I've told people unequivocally, unabashedly, Chuck Schumer doesn't give a damn about black people. Chuck Schumer cares about pimping the pain of black people to hold on to power, to do nothing for black people. That is just the unfortunate reality that we're facing here today. You look in Rochester, to your point, forget last year. Rochester, for the last 10 years, per capita, has been one of the 5 most dangerous cities to live in America.
It's a small city, one of the 5 most dangerous in the country.
Bar none. You look at this state, when it comes to the outcomes for black people, 1 out of 3 black children that live in New York State live in poverty. And it's gotten worse since Charles Ellis Schumer put his hand on a Bible 24 years ago. 3 out of 5 black children in the Bronx live in poverty. And it's been getting worse since Charles Ellis Schumer placed his hand on a Bible 24 years ago. Syracuse, New York is the highest concentration of child poverty in the nation. As of this year, officially, we wear the crown. Congratulations. All thanks to a senior senator who has placed his head in the sand when it comes to the real pain and suffering that his constituents are dealing with. Obviously, we are a large nation, over 300 million souls that call this great nation home. But his first job is to serve the people of New York. And we are continuously getting the short end of the stick. All people, all colors, all creeds, the businesses that got the hammer put to them by a state that was hostile to their presence in the midst of COVID, a state where, again, the jobs have left town, where the people that were supposed to protect those jobs are busy building this great world society. We got places in North Country where, again, they're closer to Canada than they are to Albany or New York City, right? There across the border, 8 minutes away, the people are making $30,000 more per year than they are. It's because our leadership has sold us out for global deals that are great for everybody but us. It's America last on steroids with this gang that can't shoot straight. That's why we got in this race, to let people know we have a chance to have a choice, and to tell them with no uncertain terms, if you're unhappy with the world as it is today, you cannot vote for the architects who built it. There is one architect down in D.C. more powerful than even Joseph Robinette Biden himself. His name is Chuck Schumer. We're going to get him out of office come November 8th this year.
Well, Joe, you have all that it takes, including something very special. And I've been involved in Senate races in New York since the 1960s. I haven't seen someone with that enthusiasm, believe it or not, since Robert F. Kennedy Jr. On a different side, a different view, although maybe today, more on our side.
I think all the Kennedy boys would be Republicans.
Well, I think John Kennedy certainly would on foreign policy. But in any event, who cares about that? I'm talking about just that enthusiasm. I have found in my experience in government, the people who do the job right are the people with the enthusiasm. And I like a lot of your new candidates because the old ones go in there tired and beaten already. And the new ones go in there and you get something done. And our state is gone unless we get a senator who understands, I'll call them conservative values, but common sense values.
Right.
So I'm for you. We will do everything we can to get this out. The censorship that we live under is unconstitutional, a disaster, and brought about by Democrats. So they don't let you get your voice out. But we'll find every way to do that. And keep in touch with me, Joe.
I appreciate you, Mr.
I need you in New York more than you need me.
Well, look, and I tell people they can go to joepinion.com to help us get the word out there. They can find us on Twitter, Joseph Pinion.
We're going to have that on the board.
We're going to get all you can find us on Getter, on Truth, Joe Pinion, one word. But this is going to be the year that we break the back of one party rule and let those people know that we don't need a ministry of truth. We need a recommitment to American values. That's what's on the ballot come 2022. That's what we're going to restore on the 1st of this year coming.
Well, we have up on the board how to do it. Don't go complaining about all this stuff to me. You do all the time. You always say, what can I do? It's not one thing, it's many. Here's one of them right now. Contribute to this man. Let him get that word out. You see, because if you give him money, he gets the word out. If not, Schumer just overwhelms him with all the rich people who own him. There's nothing left of Chuck Schumer. There's plenty left of this man. You can see it. And you can see in his character, nobody is buying him. Joe, it's been an honor and very, very encouraging to see that we have you as part of our future. God bless you, Joe.
Thank you so much. God bless, my friend.